The Golden Table, Part 2, by Pale Tales. It wasn't unexpected for the Spaniard sailors to find the slaves they were looking for, but what they did not expect was the amount of gold, silver, diamond, pearls, rubies, and all sorts of rare gems that were among the Ethiopian king's possession. But the most exquisite find of all was the Golden Table. As the Spaniards gazed upon its beauty, they became hypnotized and enchanted by its allure. The next day, the fleet of 7 Novo-Hispanic ships were loaded up and headed out to their motherland, Spain. The journey there was said not to be more than around 10 days, but it was day 19, and Spain, nor any shorelines could be seen. As supplies dwindled, the Spanish crew started worrying that they would never make it home. On day 22, after arguing among themselves, the men divided on their course of action. Finally, they agreed that they would have to throw some slaves overboard and let them drown in order for them to feed themselves and the rest of their cargo. So they did the unthinkable. That same night, after that horrifying event, in a strange twist of fate, all 7 ships were caught in a great storm and were thrown back and forth as giant waves crashed against them. The ships tried to maintain formation, but did so with no success. A great waterspout appeared and swallowed up 5 of the 7 ships. The men on the surviving 2 ships prayed to see another day. The next morning, as the storm passed on and the sky began clearing up, the scouts in the lookout reported land in sight, and sure enough, a shoreline could be seen. All the men were overly excited, not only because they've been on the ocean for so long, but because they all thought they would have died in the storm that swallowed their friends. After docking their ships, the captain ordered some of his crew to unload all the treasures they had stolen from the Ethiopian king, and to take it far into the mountains and deep into a cave to hide it. The captain ordered a few men to remain there to guard the treasure, because one of the ships of the 2 that survived the storm was badly damaged and taken in water to the point it would not be able to sail again. So the captain was left with the decision of leaving some of his crewmen behind on the island, while him and the rest of the crew head back to Spain to gather more resources so they could come back and retrieve their treasure. But as fate would have it, 3 days after the captain left for Spain, an English naval fleet happened to chance upon the island and noticed the wrecked Spaniard ship. They made land, found, and arrested all the Spaniards after a brief battle and declared the island Jamaica a British territory. At this time, there were Aboriginal inhabitants living there, Indians known as Arawaks. They were the first to become slaves to the English colonists, and after they were misused and most of them died out, the English decided to start importing Africans for plantation labor. A few years passed, and no one found the treasure or the golden table that was hidden in the cave. By this time, a wealthy Englishman had settled and bought the land where the cave was, and with his family and about 70 slaves, worked his land where he grew sugar cane to send back to England for profits. One day, while out surveying his property, he noticed the cave entrance, and when he went in, he noticed a glimmer of light shining on the walls of the cave. To his surprise, after going further into the cave to explore, he stumbled upon the treasure left there by the Spaniards. Not sure on what to do, he went back home to his wife and consulted with her. She gave him the best advice she could and said to him to keep it a secret and tell no one of what he had found, for the king and queen would surely send men to take it. A year went by, and the Englishman took a few of his slaves to go back to the cave and retrieve the treasure. But after a couple of days, it was finally time to move the table. Now, the cave was set midway on the side of a hill, and the Englishman's house was on the very top of that said hill. So they struggled to get the golden table up the hill, inch by inch. Finally, after getting the table home, the Englishman, his wife, and 2 kids sat around the golden table and had dinner and spoke about what they would do with all that wealth when they got back to England.
But as fate of those who possessed the golden table would have it, that night as the family slept, one of the 4 slaves that helped to carry the table to the mansion told the others about what they had seen, so they made a plan to kill the Englishman and his family, then steal the gold. And so they did. Now as they struggled to get the golden table down the hill, it was so heavy it slipped away from them and quickly rolled down the hill and into a river. Then, a few slaves dived in the river and tried finding it, but when they went down underwater, all they saw was darkness. It was as if there wasn't any bottom as far as they could see, so they eventually gave up on retrieving the table and disappeared into the mountains. Some legend has it that those same slaves were some of the first slaves to be free in Jamaica, and they were known as the Maroons. Years later, as if by magic, one day someone going by that same river noticed a shimmer of light emanating from the river. And when they went closer to investigate, it became apparent that there was a golden table floating in the middle of the river, turning slowly, like a wheel in a clock, light motion. And thus, the golden table once again appeared. End of part 2.